Man, the Wild West is so boring. Just a bunch of middle-aged dudes staring at each other while Tumbleweed is uselessly tumbling about. I know what would make it better though. Vampires, undead horses, skeletons, and busty babes in full leather. Fuck yeah, that's Darkwatch in a nutshell, developed by a team of horny teenagers. Nah, I'm just kidding. It was developed by High Moon Studios and published by Capcom and Ubisoft for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox back in 2005. It's a first-person shooter with a unique aesthetic, mixing the Old West with horror and a little steampunk. They had pretty big plans for this franchise, planning a sequel and even a film adaptation. Of course, all that went down the fucking drain and we're stuck with just this game. Thankfully, it's a pretty cool game, nothing too special, but still an interesting adventure. So let's arm ourselves with our trusty revolver and hide from the sunlight. Yeah, we've already been doing that, am I right? It's time to see what Darkwatch is all about. Jericho Cross, the main character, is a wanted outlaw who decides to rob one of Darkwatch's trains to retire from his life of crime. He also needs more protein in his diet because he looks like a scarecrow. Aboard the train are various spooky skeletons that attack our hero, but that doesn't deter him, blowing up the train's vault. But what in tarnation? There is no gold in sight, but a freaking vampire called Lazarus. How ironic. Thankfully, Jericho, along with his new partner Cassidy, manages to fend him off, but not before Lazarus bites him, cursing him to turn into a vampire himself. Now Jericho must follow Cassidy's lead and find the Darkwatch Citadel, the last bastion of vampire hunters, to cure himself of a curse and destroy Lazarus once and for all. Unfortunately, Lazarus kills Cassidy early on the adventure, leaving us all alone. Whatever, she wasn't my type anyway. Eventually, we do find the Citadel and meet the Order's leader, General Clay Cartwright. After a brutal initiation, we join the Darkwatch, get some sick threads, and undertake various missions, accompanied by our new partner, Tala, a goth GF with big booba. Hubba hubba. Ow! Man, big boobs are great, clothed or unclothed. Yeah, I can see why they're popular. So popular in fact that there was a Playboy collab with this game, featuring nude images of Tala. How fucking embarrassing. For me, I mean, you know why. Anyway, back to the story. Jericho bites Tala and turns her into a vampire during the game's obligatory sex scene. She then betrays the Order and Jericho confronts Lazarus for the final battle. He wins of course, but now he must make a choice, which will determine the game's ending. He can either rid the world of the curse of Lazarus, which leads to a fight against Tala and the release of Cassidy's soul, or he can become the curse, destroying the ghost of Cassidy and killing Tala instead. Arbitrary moral choices, boy do I love them. It gets even better when combined with the game's general morality system, but more on that later. As for the story, it's perfectly serviceable for a game of this caliber. Yeah, sure, by today's standards, it's unnecessarily edgy, with cringy dialogue and pointless sex appeal shoved in, just to cater to horny teenagers. Oh well, that's the late 2000s for ya. But I don't stand alone saying that the pacing was good, the characters were interesting, and the atmosphere was phenomenal. Overall, the plot was intriguing and excited me about what would happen next. Despite its very bleak and almost depressing atmosphere, Darkwatch's presentation is sick as hell. I love this game's graphics. They are detailed and super smoking sexy stylish, making every location feel very believable and lived in. While the level design is standard, comprising mainly linear corridors and large arena-like areas, tons of little details and decorations make them more than just your average video game levels, and they do a great job immersing you into the game's world. Well, most of the time at least. Some levels are just flat expanses of land, stretching for miles on end, without anything visually interesting to keep you engaged. But that's just the horse riding levels. Thankfully, there is a lot of variety regarding the environments, keeping things interesting. Villages, caves, mines, cemeteries, snowy cliffs, hell, pretty much all your favorites from the good old American frontier are here. But of course, the real star of the show is the art style. It's a very unique blend of horror and steampunk while maintaining the essence of old Western movies. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before, and it really elevated the experience. The gun designs are superb, the enemies look great, and the game even has ragdolls and an advanced physics system, while it's also filled to the brim with skulls and bones. There is even a skull turning into a train in the game's intro sequence. I laughed so hard when I saw that, and I barely find anything funny ever. It's just so hilariously over the top. I love it. If only the music was just as good. Sure, most of the time it's an adequate companion to the action, but you'll barely get to hear it due to the constant gunfire, explosions, and ambient sounds drowning everything else. And when you do get to hear it, you'll find out that they just blatantly ripped off Ennio Morricone's tracks from old spaghetti westerns, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Some would say it's a fitting tribute to the era the game is trying to portray. For me, it's lazy, uninspired, and doesn't fit the game's dark horror vibe. It's a shame because I actually enjoyed the game's original soundtracks, when they were audible at least. Make no bones about it though, Dark Watch looks great and its excellent atmosphere will draw you in almost immediately. Yeah, the designs are over the top, the human characters look undercooked, and the music is derivative. But it's that B-movie horror campiness that makes the experience stand out from the rest. Dark Watch definitely looks like a very unique experience, but when it comes to the gameplay, things are so by the numbers that it's kind of underwhelming. I mean, duh, it's a console first-person shooter from 2005, what did you expect? Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. You have a variety of appropriately themed old Western weapons to choose from. A revolver, a shotgun, a carbine, dual pistols, and even fancier ones like a sniper rifle, a crossbow with explosive bolts, and a rocket launcher. Yeah, not very appropriately themed at all, but they all look great with smooth and stylish animations. But do they feel great? Not that much. They do sound very satisfying, especially when you manage to nail an undead with your last shot, but they can be wildly inaccurate, making precise shots a luck of a draw most of the time, unless you're using the more accurate weapons. And even though they look meaty and capable of dealing lots of damage, most of the weapons are pretty underpowered. Combined with the fact that enemies are bullet sponges, able to take incredible amounts of punishment before finally dying, even on normal difficulty, the game's pacing ends up being slower than expected. Plus, you have a 2-weapon limit. Reminds me of some other game, I can't quite recall its name though. But it doesn't matter since you can always punch the fuckers to death, because your melee is overpowered, being able to kill lesser enemies in one hit, and greater enemies in only a few. Didn't you know? Bullets just tickle the undead. Jericho's right hook though? Worse than the Holy Cross itself. The S in FPS stands for shooter, right? Anyway, if you can handle the weapons being weaker than expected, you'll be rewarded with a variety of different missions, spanning across various environments and always introducing new ideas and mechanics to keep the action from being too repetitive. My favorite levels were the ones where I got to ride Jericho's horse, Shadow, killing undead riders and hijacking trains like a real old-school bandit. The horse should have been named Nightmare though, much more fitting in my opinion. Yeah, another great joke off my list. My least favorite levels were the ones where I had to hide from the sun, because Jericho is too much of a gamer to handle a little sunlight, thus losing his powers, and driving a stupid buggy that controls terribly while being forced to endure constant suicide bomber attacks and turret sections. All these mechanics sound very familiar, but I still can't figure out where they are from. Wait a minute, 2-weapon limit, a buggy, and turret sections in 2005? Fucking hell, Halo and its consequences have been a disaster for the FPS genre. Oh well, besides all the standard shooting, Jericho has plenty of vampire powers he can use as well, since he's undead and loving it. These range from the passive ones, like a rechargeable shield and detective vision with an annoying red overlay to it, to the more active ones, like a blast that kills all enemies near you, a power-up that increases bullet damage, or the ability to turn your enemies against each other. The caveat behind these awesome powers is that they are locked behind the game's morality system. During the playthrough, you'll be forced to choose between being the good guy, saving people and releasing their souls, or the bad guy, eating them and feasting on their spirit instead. There are no consequences no matter which path you choose, it only affects which powers you unlock. And to be honest, the evil powers were much better than the good ones, an interesting parallel to real life I suppose. Invulnerability and increased melee damage? Sign me up! Unfortunately, that's pretty much all there is to the game. Even though it's a relatively short experience, it gets repetitive and stretched out near the end, with the same swarms of enemies bum rushing you over and over, destroying their spawners again and again, with nothing to mix things up. And the worst part of it all is without a doubt the aiming. The sensitivity is so high that even the slightest nudge of the stick will send your aim flying. Okay, idiot, turn down the sensitivity then. Unfortunately, it only affects your turning speed for some fucked up reason. Ugh, fine, you whiny baby, just use the zoom in mode. Well, it kinda makes things a little better, but your aim is still too sensitive, and now my screen is blood red like a creepypasta. Combined with the unbelievably floaty movement and zero gravity jumping, it never felt like I mastered the game's controls. I eventually got better and the game grew on me, but it was still a struggle, especially since the game isn't forgiving at all. There is no auto-aim, the collisions are annoyingly precise, and the enemies feel like 15-year-olds playing Counter-Strike all day, constantly crouching and getting up or jittering left and right with no rhyme or reason, besides to piss you off. And piss me off they did. But I powered through and I'm glad I did. And that's because Dark Watch's gameplay is for the most part enjoyable, immersive, and engaging, despite its flaws. Yeah, you could say it's your average Halo clone, and you'd be right, but it's a competent one with a great atmosphere. All in all, if you can handle the game's controls, you're gonna have a grand adventure. Well, Sonny Jims, is Dark Watch worth your time? Yeah, sure, it's a fine-ass game. The plot and the gameplay are standard enough, but it's the art style and the aesthetics that truly make this game a captivating experience. Yeah, it looks hilariously edgy by today's annoying standards, and the shooting can be rough with how unresponsive the controls are, but if you can look past those flaws, you'll enjoy a lovely FPS that provides an incredible adventure, with a style that has never been replicated by another game, at least to my knowledge. Feel free to correct me in the comments, but for now, that's all I had to say about Dark Watch. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stuff. You know how it goes. You can also join my Discord and follow me on Twitter. Have a great day, and until next time, take care and have fun.